project, although the state, again, the MOU had been financially responsible, they weren't showing up with their money. We then had, the 10,000 was the revetment repair and the acquisition of the gangway at the Maritime Center. My error on this, I believe it's Division of Marine Fisheries, not Division of Waterways. They're all DCR agencies. So that's our funding. We've leveraged over $1 million to date for this project. We anticipate filing another Seaport Economic Grant that'll be insured in excess of $1 million once we're completed with the architect to construct the Maritime Center. So we've got the design funding from them, and we'll be applying for their August deadline for Maritime Center building. To do this whole project, we do need to put the parcels together to make it all work. Again, it's that flow and accessibility makes it come together. And if you've been down there, been on site, you'd understand that. And if you haven't, I do, as Lieutenant, invite you down anytime. With that, we'll take any questions. And I know Solicitor Timmons is going to talk about the legalities of the land acquisitions. Okay? I think that's enough to if there's no questions.
My second favorite.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Nice job.
We do have, just for the record, I believe that we in the packet, a lot of letters of support that have come in, that we've received and have held these 4 or 5 community meetings at this point relative to different phases of this project. So, yeah, this project is not without controversy. This project does have strong community support. There are some in the audience here this evening, and support and some of those in opposition. I'll tell you that similar to when we put the track in, I think now that the track's done, people visualize it, they see it as a great recreational asset for the city. And the same with North Quincy with the Hunt Street project. Some things tough to visualize, and having see it's done, you can't imagine not having had it. This is a facility, like I said, that's been the hub of the community voting for over 100 years, and we want to see that continue. Solicitor Timmons.
Madam President, members of the council, just briefly, the process here would be as follows. There are 2 things to look at. The provision of our charter in regard to purchase of real estate, and then the provisions of Chapter 30B, which regulate both the disposition and acquisition of property. In this particular instance, the way that the mayor has, upon consultation, the way the mayor's concluded we should proceed is that we're looking at these parcels as unique parcels. You understand from the presentation of Councilor LaForest why we would say that the particular location and the functionality that they will serve. So for that reason, what we intend to do is work within an exemption of Chapter 30B. We'll be filing some disclosures with the state in regard to the lots that are involved, why we regard them to be unique, and why we're looking to acquire them. And those disclosures have to be filed prior to entering into any agreement. And that's assuming that all of this moves through this body. Once those disclosures are filed, we'll be able to enter into agreements. I know that the administration's done some preliminary discussion in concert with the ward council, Councilor LaForest, with some of the involved property owners, so they understand what's at stake here. And there's been a little bit of talk of numbers, but we're essentially working off the numbers that you see in the assessors database for now. At that point, as the deal would then come together, in talking with various councils, I know Councilor Finn has always had a concern that not only are you involved in the appropriation financial process, but that you would like to have a look at the actual transaction itself and the opportunity to approve that. In talking with Councilor Palucci about this, he's looking to propose an amendment, and I'll let him explain that. whereby were the council to approve the financing, and then we went through the steps I just outlined, we would be coming back before you at the time when the particular transactions were ready to proceed and presenting you with the particulars. One of the concerns that Councilor Finn expressed on prior occasions was that although the council is informed generally about the numbers, you're not aware of the particulars at the time the transaction proceeds. Well, I believe that Councilor Palmucci's fashioned a remedy in the form of his proposed amendment to address that situation, and we'd be happy to work with the council in the fashion that I believe will be proposed this evening. So the process, the discussion and the due diligence has been underway for a while. The legal process is not all that difficult, and we'll move forward with those parameters in mind. The body is considering this evening authorizing a certain amount of money to be used toward the transaction. And then that would allow us to move forward with a negotiation with the parties. Frankly, the administration can't do anything until they know that there's money available to do it. So what would happen is authorization of funding, negotiation with the parties, the deals will come together. They'll come together in compliance with the provisions of Chapter 30B. And once that happens, we would then be back before you before closing on the deals.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
If there are any questions.
Council Finn.
Yeah, Jim, just one question that I was wondering about is, and again, forgive my ignorance in relation to these things, but Chapter 40, Section 14, does that apply to this, or is that different?
Well, that's the charter provision. Chapter 40 is essentially the ordinance that provides for charter provisions.
Right.
And that's in our charter. So that's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Section 14 says that it can't be, if it's 125%, it can't be 125% or more. Are we going to do that in line with that?
Right. And yes, and we actually have that particular provision and those numbers in mind here.
All right.
And we'll be working with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
Council Calhoun.
It's very easy though.
Oh, we had already discussed this.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry.
This in no way, the authorization as currently drafted, or currently amended 2017-50, that wouldn't in any way be this council authorizing an eminent domain taking, correct? It could not be construed as such, right?
Would not authorize what?
It's not an eminent domain taking. It's not a taking.
That's correct.
Right? It is not
And
a
that-
hostile, we would not be authorizing a hostile taking, right?
Correct. What would happen would be this, that once we understand what's authorized as far as the finances, we'll then attempt to work by way of agreement with the parties involved. If there's a breakdown and eminent domain is the only option, we might come back, were that to occur, we'd be coming back to report to you. But so far, that has not happened to us. And, I'm not sure. The mayor previously, I know on the Hunt Street project, he'd said he didn't want to use the eminent domain right. And no one wants to get on and taking property. My understanding is the due diligence of the property owners is in place. So.
Okay, I think it's important to just note that we're all in agreement that this in no way
Correct.
authorizes a...
This is an attempt to get a cooperative transaction in place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Calhoun. Yes, Council Finn.
But again, as it goes back to the charter specifically, if it exceeds that 125%, there could be a breakdown in negotiations.
Yes, well, you're right about the charter provision, and there is a little issue there, because it specifically says that if you go beyond the 25%, then it shall be done by eminent domain.
Right.
So we do understand that issue is there. We're going to have to address that if it arises.
Which means that in terms of this overall project, there have to be some attempt to define this in terms of as a public could to justify eminent domain.
Well, that's true, yes, of course, in any domain proceeding, right.
Just to clarify.
Did you want, yeah, Mr. Speaker.
Just to clarify, myself and the mayor had preliminary meetings with all of the property owners, or myself and the mayor, or just the mayor. And we are not looking to utilize the eminent domain procedure. This is something that if they are willing sellers, otherwise like the YMCA parking lot, we'll just work right around it. That's why we don't have to rest our design and the site plan forward without the land acquisition piece of play. But we will not, this is not an eminent domain property.
Yeah, I know Councilor May
Well,
wants
this
to
is
speak,
kind of the
but
point.
there,
It's
yeah,
fine,
no,
but-
yeah.
Again, if I put it, because I really want to stress what I'm saying is that under the charter, if there's an issue that relates to the actual, what they're getting based again on the assessments over the last few years or whatever, then you do have a key issue there. Because then it's not, there's no question in my mind that this is anything about it in the domain. But what I'm saying is that the charter is very clear. And so if people's asking prices or what they're seeking kind of exceeds that, need to be back before the council.
There's a concept, there are a couple of, within eminent domain, there are a couple little subheadings. There's confirmatory takings, there's friendly takings. So one of the things that may occur is if we're in a situation that we're in agreement, but the numbers aren't working right, what primarily will have to happen is that additional appraisals will have to occur. That's really the basis for the eminent domain provision in our charter, is it triggers a process which ensures that the fair market value is paid. So what would happen is, if we get up to that 25% ceiling, and it's coming into play, there'll be additional appraisals done, and there'll be a presentation made that will refine a little further why what's being paid is being paid, and it would be a so-called friendly taking. It wouldn't be an adversarial.
But it would still require a vote back before this body. They should authorize that.
Say that again,
It
please.
would require a vote back before this body to authorize that.
Right, prior to anything, yes.
Prior to that.
There'd have to be a presentation.
It would require 2/3 vote of the council.
What's that?
Would it require a 2/3 vote of the council under?
Yes, yeah, eminent domain is 2/3, correct.
Thank you. Thanks. Councilor May.
Thank you, Madam President. Thanks for your presentation. I just have a question for you on the appraisal. So the total from both of these packets are based off of the current appraised value brings us to $2,007,000, but the appropriation request is for $2,750,000. Is there a reason for the, well,
Sure.
just explain the reason for the difference?
Sure, I also included the actual property that DCR owns. And so we already works with DCR to probably transfer ownership. I just include that into your packets if you're doing the math, that's in there. A few of the properties have multiple parcels pieced together, so I don't know that that would be how they would genuinely be appraised, right? So that, for example, in the Louis parking lot, there's two, on the GIS, there's two pieces together. The other one is LeBrec, is I believe included in the, is in the same line item. So for those of you familiar with the LeBrec parking lot, it's not the LeBrec parking lot, it's the Holy Trinity Most Sacramento Parish parking lot. The neighborhood uses it like we own it, and it's become quite a junkyard and a headache with one of my probably most frequent complaints. But by all means, if the Archdiocese were to sell it, its own residence aid, and we broke it up into a lot of house lots, we would have a landlocked public park. Public park is a very point of pride in House Neck, home of the House Neck Planets, former House Neck T-ball, women's softball league plays there, we've got basketball courts, we have a playground, and a lot of community events that occur there as well. So the public parking lot has always been utilized by the public in shared partnership with the church. And so that this is an opportunity that's been long talked about, that most people think it's a public parking lot, utilize it as if it's a public parking lot, and we'll bring this on to
public, and we'll keep it from being developed in the future.
Thank you. And then just for, so the last slide, that's like the grant funding that's been received thus far. Is this funding, is there anything left in this funding to then spend and
Yep, so the
support
600,
this as well?
sure. So this, and now I will review line by line, but the 680 Seaport Economic Council is the boat ramp construction. Right now, that's in permit phase. We expect that construction to happen this summer. We have not scheduled that. We're going to kind of wait and hear when the permit comes through, get our bids in, and figure it out in timeline, whether we're doing it during the boating season, at the end of the season. We'll be talking to the boating public about that. So that is in the account waiting to be spent. The $250,000 Seaport Economic Council for design and permitting of the Maritime Center is under contract with Time Bond, as Weston is the architect. That is currently being spent, there's funding in the account. The community preservation funding, I believe, has fully been expended. There's two separate grants. So actually, there's 3 community preservation grants for the public landing. So the 175 fully expended, the 25 was the cost match for the DCR grant fully expended, the 10,000 division, who did ramp repairs, and the gangway acquisition fully expended.
Okay, and the first one, the 100,000 DCR grant for engineering design, is that that hasn't been spent yet, or?
So that's currently being spent down in partnership with redesign and site work.
Thank
So, you know, one's a reimbursable grant to spend it, money is coming back in, so we're utilizing the 2 grants offsetting each other.
Thank you. Amen.
Any money's out there, we're going to get it. Great,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to
Just
speak?
one question for the solicitor. Jim, if you don't mind. It's a long community back and forth.
He's gonna cut through Ward 4. Watch. They all do.
Always going back.
Cutting through
Good evening, Jim. Please excuse my lack of experience in the whole property acquisition.
Excuse.
Thank you. But obviously I've sat up there and seen us go through, another iteration of this in the aforementioned Hunt Street, which, probably could have went a little bit better, I'm sure, in hindsight. But my question is with this, and I don't know the answer, but you mentioned like valuations, and I was trying to follow what Council Finn was saying, per Mass General Law, basically you have to be within 125% the appraisal number, right?
Yeah.
In order for it, so,
Well, you're supposed to take the prior 3-year appraisals, average it, and then not exceed 25% of that number. So hypothetically, if the average of the prior 3-year appraisals were $100,000, then if we work out a deal where we're buying for $125,000 or less,
we're good.
then we're all set. If not, then the eminent domain process is supposed to be followed, and there are a few thought processes about why.
Sure. So I'm just wondering, like, and this is the part I don't know, why aren't the valuations typically done before the financial ask? So you have a better idea as.
Why aren't they being done before?
Correct.
Well, the reason is that this is all expensive. Like, one of the things that happened on Hunt Street, we were talking about 10 homes. Now, one appraisal, $4,000, so times 10, that's 40. The eminent domain proceeding requires 3 appraisals. So that kicks costs up quite dramatically, very quickly. And frankly, that's really the sole reason why on prior occasions we've worked so hard to negotiate sale prices with parties. And they do so on an informed basis, this isn't any sort of, not taking advantage of anyone or anything, but it's much better to get these things done by agreement, and it's more costly if you don't. And then the other issue with eminent domain is hypothetically, the party can come back and file a lawsuit and seek further money. Because when you do it by way of agreement, and you have a conveyance under an agreed transaction, everything's closed down. The eminent domain proceeding doesn't necessarily close things down, which is why we want to try to do friendly takings.
I'm not even at mentally the eminent domain piece, I'm more at the, phase one, which is, to your point, if you use your numbers, you have $4,000 per appraisal, right? You have three properties that you're looking at.
Well, that was on Hunt Street, right?
Okay, so $5,000 per appraisal, with three properties
Whatever.
that you're looking at, right? It's $15,000, but then you're able to establish your baseline, right, for each property. What basically you could go up to 125% of that value before you get into those eminent domain. I'm just saying, why don't we proceed in that fashion? So that
Well, we have that baseline.
Could I, Mr. Solicitor, sorry to interrupt, I know the mayor's representative seems to just jump in on this. So I wonder,
Let me just answer this one.
yeah,
We have that baseline, it's in the appraisal database. Like, all the properties, we know what the city's been valuing them.
So the GIS, right?
Well, no, the appraisal database, GIS, is the same thing, yeah. So we know what the values are, and we work off of those values. Those are the numbers that we've started with. We've talked about what some of those values are, but then there's also, we have a number of appraisals. When the Furnace Ave transaction was done in Ward 4, we had a number, I had 3 or 4 different appraisals from different transactions in the city that had open space valuations that were available to us. So we have appraisal data, private appraisal data available now that has been used by the folks who are working on this, and we have the appraisal data from the assessor's office. So there are numbers out there, and the thought process you have is something that we are following. It's just not through the eminent domain mechanism.
Digest that, we'll come back to this at the end of the finance, but thank you for your input. Any further questions from the council regarding this? Okay, so, council, come with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to move to amend. Everyone's looking at me, so I assume this is the appropriate time.
We're gonna come back, we're gonna start from the top and kind of work our way back down. Council Order 2017-50.
So I can either amend it now or amend it at the end.
Go for it.
Okay.
Sure.
So
Just
I
tell
would-
them, we'll bring it back at the tail end.
I know this is
Well, these are sequentially alphabetized under one council order. So we're gonna go back and start at A, and we'll B, C, and we'll end up at D where we are now. The reason we're talking about this obviously is because we ran out of steam the last time you were in the meeting, so the presentation that you made.
I can wait till the end.
Sure.
That's fine.
Okay. All right, so I don't know if folks picked that up, but we're looking at Council Order 2017-50, and as I mentioned, they're all alphabetized, so ABCD. We'll go through each one. I know the representatives for each letter are in the attendance, in the audience. So if we have questions or we want to discuss it further, we can do so, and then we'll take a vote on each letter, and then come back and take a cumulative on the actual order number. So with that, first letter up is $15.7 million for the construction of Hancock Adams Street. I see Mr. Shea up there, I know he gave the original presentation. I don't know if folks have additional questions regarding this, comments.
sorry, I'm just trying to get some order here with clarification and everything. What, are we gonna vote at line item A, and then B, then C, D, or we're gonna talk about all of them and then?
Well, we've had an opportunity to discuss through it. I don't know if councils have digested this to a point. Again, all the subject matter experts are in the audience, so we'll go line by line, and then we'll come back because it's all under one order, and take a final go through. So again, first,
Sounds good to me, I'm ready for these votes.
any discussion on the first one? Letter A, 15.7.
Motion approved.
The motion to approve by Councilor Forrest. We don't need a second for the Rec Committee. Any discussion on the motion?
Point of order.
Yes.
Are we actually in committee? I thought, we voted this issue out of committee, I thought, to consider it, or I don't think we continued.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yep, point taken. So you need a second.
Second. Is there a second? Second.
Council Harris, all right, so there's a motion to approve by Council Forrest, seconded by Council Harris on item A. Any discussion? Council Devon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we have it at A and B, but I'd like to overlap. I'd just like to make a statement first, and then it'll sum up this item for $15.7 million for the construction of the Adams Hancock Green. Actually, the Hancock Adams Green. I just wanted to put this into opening statement. Parks is an important element to the city of Quincy. I grew up here in Quincy. Parks, playgrounds, and playing sports was a vital role in shaping my life. Not only being educated here in the Quincy Public Schools, but playing sports and leisure activities on all these parks is why I'm currently talking to all of you tonight. Playing the youth sports like football, baseball, and basketball was a way of staying out of trouble. I played for various teams like the Quincy Point Panthers youth football team in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I now coach that same childhood team for the last 6 years as the varsity head coach for 7th and 8th graders. I played and coached on fields like Veterans Memorial Stadium, Fort River Field, LeBrec, Kavanaugh, Paget, and O'Rourke. I also played baseball for the Quincy Police of the Babe Ruth League, Morissette Legion of Quincy High School baseball at Adams Field and Marymount Field. And I leisurely played basketball and street hockey at parks like the old Pollard Park, which is now the Clifford Marshall School. Today I bring my 3 young children at all the parks around the city. These parks are a way for me to spend time with my family and enjoy the outdoors. We love parks like Brill Field, Quarry Hills, and Faxon Park. We are fortunate enough to have places to go in a city of this size of 94,000 people. The hotel motel tax was established with the Home Rule petition in 2001. It is very important to understand that this funding source is not financed through the taxpayers of our city. This does not fall back on the taxpayers at all, not a dime. The Hancock Adams Green is a centerpiece and first look off the Quincy Center MBTA station, a gateway into our city. It also complements the new downtown redevelopment right outside here. Look outside these windows tonight. We've all been talking about this Hancock Adams Green for some years now. We knew this day would come. How do we fund this? Like Mr. Walker in the administration said in previous council meetings, we took advantage of federal and state funding already. The mayor and the administration is looking to invest $15.7 million of hotel motel tax that doesn't fall back on the taxpayers of the city. I will be in support of this park improvement plan as well as this item on number 8. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion, Council Kane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll make a blanket statement too, as my colleague, but we just kind of went through a process where we, as council, approved an amendment to the hotel motel tax release uses thereof. And so I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is this is a spending bill that's $27 million for park improvements that, from the get-go, I've seen as a little too ostentatious, a little too grand. And, the purpose of putting forward the amendment for the hotel motel tax was to, in effect, amend this extraordinary spending bill. So, as we said, council meeting over council meeting, this isn't parks versus roads, but this is about identifying needs versus wants and setting a clear identification of priorities overall. I don't necessarily think that these reflect priorities, but I also don't know what actually are priorities most of the time to this administration. With respect to number A, Hancock Adams Green, I still think is a capstone project. I think we still have a lot of work to do downtown, and once that's done, we can put a cherry on top, which would be this. I think it looks great out there right now, and I think that $16 million is a ridiculous amount of money to put in a small space of land. So again, this isn't that I don't like parks. I think parks are great. I just think that $27 million for, 16 of which is going to be for the Hancock Adams Green is a little misguided, and I think could use some re-amending. But I don't see that going that way tonight, so I won't be voting for any of this as set forward tonight. Thank you.
Just to kind of wrap it up, I guess, seeing no other comments from my fellow councilors. I spent a lot of time, like everyone else, thinking through this and, listening to Councilor, DeBona and his long-time memories growing up in the city and playing various sports throughout different fields. I feel very strongly about parks as well. And I feel that my work as a ward councilor can certainly back that up. Thinking through, and participating in various discussions, particularly over the last month or so, where we're trying to work through, I guess, a dialogue where, what is indeed, the priority. And, it's something that I've struggled with. I know my phone phone rings quite frequently with folks, expressing their concern about the roads. I don't want to make this about the roads, but, when I think through sort of the evolution of the downtown, I do, agree with Council King that, something should continue to evolve out front of, City Hall. I just feel like with some of the looming, priorities as they relate to, road infrastructure, it's just tough for me to get behind at this stage of the overall downtown development. An additional $16 million on top of, the 17 that's already invested in, and that's over $30 million, and that's a lot of it paid for with federal and state subsidy and grants, which is awesome. But it's still a lot of money, knowing a lot of the work that we have to do outside. Again, I share it with you in committee, but knowing the amount of the spending packages that are on our desk right now, we're looking at north of $400 million. And Councilor DeBona talked about capital investment in the roads. That was last year. So I'm talking real time, $400+ million on our desk, not a dollar tied to the roads. So I'm just trying to voice what's coming out of Ward 2 and my constituents. Is on their top of mind. So with that being said, I will not be supporting this as well. So seeing any further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor King.
No.
Councilor Crowe.
No.
Councilor DeBona.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
No.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaForest.
Yes.
Councilor Liang.
Yes.
Councilor Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That section of the order passes. Next item for discussion here is letter B, which is $6.15 million for park improvements citywide. I know that we're joined by Park Director Franz, who I think did a great job of kind of bringing us through the iteration for all the park plans as presented. I don't know if folks have any further questions for Mr. Franz, but he's here. You good?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to elaborate just real quick on this subject because I elaborated a little bit for both A and B. But let me just talk a little about B real quick here. 6.15, which is going to be the hotel motel tax does not go back on the taxpayer again. You see, sometimes the public doesn't fully understand that. Sometimes it's not written in the paper correctly. And I'm not just saying that, but sometimes it just doesn't. And I get out there and then they look at me like I have 10 heads and they say, well, what are you doing approving something like that? But let's talk about it again real quick. The hotel motel tax does not go back on the taxpayer. It is a fund that is set up through a revenue source that we established in 2001 through a home rule petition amendment. So just to elaborate a little bit on just, my history up here, before I became on the council, before I became a school committee member, I spent 2 years on that Park and Recreation Board, where I learned a lot of vital things about the city of Quincy in 2012 and 2013. And I will tell you that in attest to when we had budget session, we had everybody out here from the Park and Rec Board, which I served with many of those members, and how important that parks are for this city. Please understand that there's an opioid epidemic that's outside there, outside these halls, outside these doors, that we have to get to our children at an early age. You cannot consider the fact that, hey, listen, we have to do this in our 20s. We have to get to children at an early age to get them on these parks and to be playing with each other than on the street corner or playing video games. We have to get the kids in the parks, and that's why I feel that I have to be a vocal leader up there about these parks. And when this appropriation is put in front of me, especially this number B for the park improvement citywide, I feel that, and I also talked about earlier how important it is to have your family go there with you and spend time. I go outside the city a lot to shop for, whether it be suits or shirts or ties. I go outside the city. But the one thing that we do inside the city, we do a fantastic job with is our parks and improving them continuously. This is a major improvement that will help out the opioid epidemic that we face in front of us today. And I will continuously talk about it as we have hearings stepping forward. But this is more than just about parks. This is more than just about, we're going to do this now when we think it's the right time. We have to establish a place for our children and our families to go to congregate together. Help out the Quincy Police and Quincy firefighters, EMTs, with this Narcan situation, with the opioid epidemic, because it goes hand in hand, it's together. So we need to start at an early age and get our kids over there. And with that, I'll be in full support of this line item number B tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vaughn. On the motion, Councilor Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to clarify what I believe, with all due respect, Councilor Devona, is a misleading statement. This does, at the end of the day, fall on the taxpayer. Whether it's not immediate, there are future costs to each one of these items on this list. For the construction of the Hancock Adams Green, you'll have maintenance, you'll have cleanup, you'll have everything else which falls on the dime of the taxpayer. That goes, all these projects are on the balance sheet of the city. Park improvement citywide, you mentioned this being a sort of direct correlation to fixing the opioid epidemic, which is a very dangerous, I think, correlation to make, considering that with resources such as $6 million, addressing that issue could be potentially better used to directly address it. A design and permitting phase of a master plan for Marymount Park, again, sounds very nice, but there are future costs that we don't see here for those design measures that we see here. So I just want to clarify that, while these costs immediate here may come out of the hotel motel tax or being leveraged to, the tune of $27 million, there will be future costs to all these projects. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any, Councilor motion?
Thank you. So I'm going to support this item, section B here. It includes the dog park, which and the money for the dog park. I feel like I'd be walked out of town if I didn't. But no, I couldn't resist. But because it's important, our city of Northside, we don't have a dog park. It's a long time coming. And I also think, perhaps much to the chagrin of dog owners across the city, I think once we have a fully functional dog park, we can then start policing our fields and getting dogs off of the other fields that are meant for sports. Can't tell you how many times I get calls about divots and other things that people step in on the field, and I say, well, we don't have a place people can bring their dogs. Now we will. But I do just, for the record, want to say that I expressed this when we had a in the subcommittee meeting about the access point. I disagree with the access point coming off of Quarry Street. One, I think to pave a road that doesn't exist in our current infrastructure situation, where there are a lot of roads that exist already that need to be paved, is illogical to me. And then second, part of the mitigation in the discussion with Avalon for their project up there was that we would get access through Avalon in a better controlled intersection. And I know it's not signalized, but it's more visible to get access to a dog park there. So I'm disappointed by the location of it. I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater here and vote against it because I disagree with where it's going. The access point is going to be, because I think it's a far more important vote to take in favor, because it's a good project. I feel like I have to say that for the record. So, because when I get the calls from residents who are driving down Quarry Street and they say, "Why the heck would you put the entrance right there?" I can say, "Well, hey, I said that was a bad idea," because I think it's going to be unsafe. I think that where the exit's going to be is the roadway's right near the Sons of Italy. As someone who drives in that road multiple times a day, there's a bit of a blind corner there. I just think it's dangerous. So I hope, should this pass, should that project move forward, which I hope it does, I would just ask the administration to reconsider the access point, continue to see if it's not something we can do through Avalon or some other way in which we can make, if we have to do it on Quarry Street, we make it safer than what it potentially could be if we just drop a new street right there and leave it as a free-for-all. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor?
Again, this is one of the difficulties I have sometimes with these, large bonds that we put together with this stuff, because there's some things in it that are actually, I think, absolutely critical, and I do believe that upkeep of these particular parks that we're talking about in athletic fields is absolutely critical, and I would want to support that part of it 100%. Let that be known. Objections to the larger bond itself are not related to the very fact that I do believe money needs to be expended in order to preserve and protect the great gains that have actually been made, particularly with this administration in terms of upkeep of those fields. So again, I will be voting yes for this particular provision.
Thank you, Council Finn. I concur with you. Also a park enthusiast as well, and saw many folks at the public hearing come out here and talk about the importance of enhancing, repairing, rebuilding various parks throughout their wards, throughout their districts, throughout their streets, etc. I do think, knowing the intention of the hotel motel tax, that part of that should continue to be used for investment in parks. Obviously, you know how I feel about roads, so I'm not really going to reiterate that. But do want to just be clear in the way that I kind of approach this. It's a rather large ask, and no matter how the revenue source goes forward, the votes that are taken on any of this essentially commits or locks up, for lack of a better word, the money or the revenue for 15, 20, 25 years. So there is another component to it of, when we say it's not tied to the taxpayer directly, there's some validity to it, but there's also no access to these funds for, again, 15, 20, 25 years. So I just kind of wanted to be on the record and point that out. Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Counselor King.
No.
Counselor Crowe.
Yes.
Counselor DeBon.
Yes.
Counselor Finn.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor LaForest.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Member reporting in the affirmative, that subsection of the order passes. Councilors, next on the agenda is item C, which is $2.4 million for the design and permitting for Mary Mount Park Master. obviously Mr. Brand, and I believe there were a couple other gentlemen that had presented as well, but I'm assuming if we had any questions, it'd be directed toward you.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Council Hughes,
Second.
second by Council Forrest. Any discussion on the motion? No? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor King.
No.
Counselor Crowe.
No.
Counselor DeBon.
Yes.
Counselor Finn.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor LaFars.
Yes.
Counselor Leeang.
No.
Counselor Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
6 members.
Members voting in the affirmative, that subsection of the order passes. The last and final item for this evening is $2.75 million for the acquisition related to the construction of a new maritime center in Houseneck and the parking lot of the correction field. And Council Forrest gave us a presentation. Did you
Motion
want-
to approve.
Motion to approve. Second. There was, I was going to go.
Amendment. I withdraw my motion.
Okay, sorry, motion.
I'll
Carried.
amend it when we're done with everything.
Council Calhoun.
That's now.
I'll amend it when we get to the
We're there.
big vote. On 17-050.
Wasn't that part of this right here?
No, I'm voting on D.
We are.
Acquisitions.
That wasn't that where your amendment was?
It's what it relates to, so I'll be happy to make it now.
Yeah, you want to talk us through it? I'm
Sure,
curious.
but it's to the overall order.
So you're amending the overall order.
I'm amending the overall order.
Point of order, I think, given that understanding of it, that I think his initial instinct is the proper one, we should probably just proceed with the vote. He's amending the overall.
The overall order, okay. Motion approved.
Motion approved by Council Forrest, second by Council Hughes. Any further discussion on the motion? Council Finn?
Mr. Chairman, again, I want to be very, very clear. I'm not going to enter into the issue of the merits of the project at this particular point, but I am going to vote in opposition to this specifically because of my concerns, again, of kind of giving wholesale, what I consider to be wholesale acquisitions within the context of large bond issuances. And again, you know, we've had some of these discussions before in the past, and yet things have proceeded, oftentimes at great cost. So I'm going to be opposing D.
Any further discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Counselor King.
No.
Counselor Crowe.
Yes.
Counselor DeBon.
Yes.
Counselor Finn.
No.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor LaFars.
Yes.
Counselor Leeang.
Yes.
Counselor Calmucci.
No.
President Hughes.
Yes.
6 members.
6 members voting in the affirmative. Council Calmucci, want to put a bow around the council order with your proposed amendment here?
Yes, I move to amend 2017-50 to add, as a new paragraph, any expenditure for the purchase of land must be approved, comma, as to final amount, comma, by separate vote of the city council. I'll need a few. Love if someone would second that.
Second.
Any discussion on Council Calmucci's amendment to Council Order 2017-50?
Sure. Any expenditure for the purchase of land must be approved as to final amount by separate vote of the city council. Just by way of explanation, this would just mean that the price needs to be approved by this body. You know, we're approving arguably, the request is for a $27 million bond. The language in the bond essentially says they can use, the administration can use the $27 million for anything consistent with the bond. So if they decided to shift money over because they wanted to pay 10 times assessed value, there's nothing in this bond authorization. There's something in the charter perhaps, but there's nothing in this bond authorization that would require them to come back and ask our approval to pay, you know, some higher amount than what they've projected. So this amendment would require the administration to come back for our approval of the final amount that we negotiated with homeowners prior to the transaction.
If I could, Counselor, and you could maybe just explain it to me, so no matter what, once they enter into a negotiated amount, that amount's coming back here before those properties are purchased.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Council.
And again, through you to Council Calhoun, would you consider a friendly amendment that picks up at the end of yours and simply says, subject to the provisions of our city charter and Massachusetts general law?
Why would we add that?
Well, to make certain that any more than anyone else, we're making certain that we're doing it according to oil as opposed to simply just giving property away.
I mean, I have no problem with that amendment, I'm just wondering what the, that friendly amendment is. So I'll accept that as a friendly amendment, which doesn't require any type of vote, so it's subject to,
Again, subject to the provisions of our city, of the Quincy City Charter and Massachusetts general law.
okay. I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, motion made by Councilman Jennings. Councilor Hughes, second? Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment to the overall bond authorization? Seeing none? Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Counselor King.
Yes.
Counselor Crowe.
Yes.
Counselor DeBon.
Yes.
Counselor Finn.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor LaFarge.
Yes.
Counselor Leeang.
Yes.
Counselor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members.
Thank you. All right, final, kind of bring this all together because it is under one council order. The council order is 2017-50, and it is that the city of Quincy appropriate the sum of $27 million for the purpose of park improvements, including development and improvement of land owned by the city for recreational facilities and/or acquisition of land by purchase for open space and park purposes. Said improvements obviously reflect the entire letters that we went through, so we'll take one final vote on the overall aggregate total of $27 million. Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead. We're voting on the overall appropriation of $27 million. So we're coming back in this procedure. So subset alphabetized sections where to ask questions about each project, as I mentioned. Propose cuts, don't propose cuts, and then we come back at the end and vote the actual bond order, which is 2017-50, in the aggregate of $27 million, because the amount never fluctuated. And I checked with the clerk and procedurally, that's the procedure.
For point of clarification, but if people voted no on certain parts,
Yeah, that's fine.
how can they go on the whole now?
They don't have to.
Then how does then, okay. It wouldn't, makes no sense.
No, I actually, I'm sorry to just interject, but I actually have the same point, concern as Councilor Kane, because folks who voted
No on
yes
certain
and no on
parts, yeah.
some, how does that reconcile?
Yeah.
I don't understand what the point would have been, but yeah.
Procedurally, right, because they were not separate orders. I tried to go through it, preemptively.
But they're not separate
But
orders,
they're
they're
not,
one order.
Right.
So you're either voting up or
So
down.
now we already broke them out. We already broke them out and have already been voted on. I think maybe the solicitor could shed some light on this.
It's still one entire order.
It is. Indeed.
Yeah. You're presenting
Right.
one option.
I think, Councilor
So it just,
Palmucci has a question.
so my understanding of what we did there is that the chair of the finance committee wanted to give us an opportunity to vote individually on each piece, which is what this body had requested of the mayor to break it out to. So Procedurally, it's almost as if that was an advisory opinion, as if we were in committee. It was an advisory vote as to each individual element. You think of it as if it was like a motion to amend by cutting or approving. So it was, do you approve or disapprove, almost as if it was an amendment, one through each one, so that people could speak and vote individually on the elements. Now the overall order in its entirety is up for a vote, regardless of what happened on the subparts.
So in actuality, through you, Madam Chair, Madam President. So in actuality, there's no separation of this, of any of these. You either take it or leave it.
That is how the mayor introduced this particular measure. Despite us asking that they reintroduce it in separate parts, they broke it out within one ordinance. So we cannot, we can approve, we can deny, or we can cut individual lines. Those are our only three options in terms of 17-50.
Okay.
Is that everybody clear? This is on the overall order 2017-50.
Counselor Kane.
No.
Counselor Crowe.
No.
Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Finn.
No.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Forrest.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
6 minutes. The order passes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Crowe. Did we have something else out of finance? No. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Madam President,
So we go back,
point
yes,
of personal revolution.
yes,
Could I just ask that I had set out of the chamber to use the restroom. Can I just ask that I vote be recorded on 16-287 as a yes and on 17-55 as a yes? Thank you.